What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. And we've got a fight night taking place this weekend in the KFC Yum Center, and surprise, surprise, Jared Cannonier is in the main event. He's facing Nassourdine Imavov, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the first prelim, ending with the main event, and I'm giving my prediction and breakdown of every single fight on the card. It's a fun card, not super stacked with name value, but I do think there's going to be a lot of finishes. So yeah, let's get into it. So we're going to start off with the more minor fights that I don't really care too much about to do like long breakdowns of. So first fight on the card, Pooja Tumar, an Indian female fighter, versus Rayan Amanda or Rayan dos Santos. I'm picking dos Santos to win. She's Brazilian. She's got some decent wins. She's made her UFC debut. Pooja Tumar, I haven't watched any of her fights because I'm not going to go back and watch regional fucking Indian MMA. But she's got a loss to like Stamp Fairtex. Her losses are to pretty good competition, but she just hasn't beat any good competition. So yeah, I'm going to go with dos Santos. I think she's more experienced. She's got more ways to do well in this fight. So yeah, I'll take her to win. But the next fight is Taylor Lapulis. We're going top left to bottom right, by the way. Taylor Lapulis versus Cody Stamann. I'm going to be going with Taylor Lapulis. I like him as a striker. He's not the most entertaining fighter, but his fight with Basharat, he kept it pretty competitive, and Basharat's a solid fighter. He lost, don't get me wrong, but I think Basharat's just going to be a more effective guy at doing what Cody Stamann does. Because against Calvin Loughran, who's a very similar build and frame to Cody Stamann, and who's got fights very similar to him, he shot a bunch of takedowns, got a bunch of takedowns stuffed, and Lapulis just kind of tuned him up on the feet. So I like Taylor to look good in this fight. He's got that French kickboxing style. We know how they fight. They're good at using range, and he's actually got some good takedown defense too. So I'll take him to win. Next fight is Eduarda Mora versus Denise Gomes. Now, look, you might look at the two of them and say, which one of them looks more lesbian? I might go with Denise Gomes, but I am going to go with Eduarda Mora. She's a big girl for the weight class. She missed weight by like 4 pounds in her last fight, which is good if you want to have success, you know, be bigger than your opponent. She's like 5'6", Gomes like 5'1". Gomes like the classic little mini Andrade build with his. Mora is actually like a physically imposing girl in the grappling. And she's got good takedowns. She's got really good control time, and she's heavy on top. So yeah, I think she'll win here by either TKO. I'm picking Lapulis by decision, and then I'll go Amanda by decision, by the way. But yeah, for this one, I'll go with Mora by either TKO or submission on the ground. Easy work for her, I think, in the grappling. Gomes looked alright against Angela Hill, but I do think Mora's got way better grappling than Angela Hill. Next fight, we got Jesse Butler versus Brad Katona. Now, I watched MMA Guru and Lucas Tracy's prediction video, and they're both picking Jesse Butler, which is interesting because, yes, he's got like a 10-inch reach advantage, so that is good for him there, and Brad Katona is not all that good, but Brad Katona he's been used to fighting with a reach disadvantage his whole career. He's a fucking little manlet midget. He's a fucking small human. He's a dwarf. He even sounds like a dwarf too. But he's used to that. It's not like he's been the bigger guy for most of his career, and now all of a sudden he's fighting some guy with a bigger reach. Like, he's always had the reach disadvantage. He fought Cody Gibson, who had a massive reach advantage over him, and he pushed the pace in the third round and took over in that fight. So I think he can do a similar thing here. Maybe he gets a finish. I do think Jesse Butler's going to probably have a tough weight cut because he's 5'10", and he's not like a Corey Sandhagen skinny 5'10". He's like an actually built 5'10". His last fight in the UFC was a lightweight, pretty much a year ago in June, I believe it was, against Jim Miller. I think this will be like a year since he fought. Maybe he spent all that time cutting down and he's going to come in good shape and just be way too big for Katona and keep it on the feet, because I do think if it's on the feet at range and Butler's able to keep it a slower pace, I think he can do well. But Katona pushes the pace pretty well. He can mix in the takedowns too. And yeah, I think some people I've picked fights based on reach before, and sometimes it doesn't work out. And the lower level fighters, like Jesse Butler, just don't know how to use their reach. So yeah, I'm going to go with Brad Katona here. Maybe gets a TKO, but I think he might just end up getting a decision, just doing more work. He's a massive favorite, way too big to be a bettable line. But I do see like kind of people trying to be a bit clever with an underdog pick, given that he is going to be at a massive reach disadvantage. But I don't rate Jesse Butler. I think he's fought Cairns his entire career, came in against Jim Miller, got smoked in fucking 10 seconds basically. And also cutting down to bantamweight. Don't think his cardio is going to be that good. Don't think his chin's going to be that good. And he already got slumped by Jim Miller. Not saying Brad Katona's slumping anyone, but, might be slumping people back in the armchair because they're asleep. But yeah, I'm picking Brad Katona to win, pushing a pace, looking better in the later rounds. Maybe Jesse Butler looks good early and people are worrying, saying, oh my god, this guy that everyone put in their parlays is a massive favourite, because a lot of people are retarded. They might be like, oh fuck, this guy's looking good, but I do think he'll gas, and I think Katona will take over late and get bank the second and third rounds. Next fight, Andrea Lee versus Montana De La Rosa. They've fought before, and Andrea Lee won. And it's women's MMA, and it's not high level, so I'm going to pick the same outcome to happen again. Now, Andrea Lee is on a 4-fight loss streak. I do think she's going to be more hungry to get this win. Montana De La Rosa, I think, is on a 3-fight loss streak, so both of these girls, very low level, almost 500 level records in their careers. But they've fought before. I did not do myself the disservice of going back and watching that fight, because let's be honest, I could probably tell you exactly what happened, and that's probably a whole lot of range striking with some pitter-pat leg kicks, some clinching, and maybe some low-effort takedowns. And again, I have not looked at anything to do with that fight. So yeah, I'm going to go with Andrea Lee by decision, probably a split because it's women's MMA. But yeah, Montana De La Rosa got some good assets on her, in the upper half. So that might sway the judges. We've seen how Tabitha Ricci fights go. One judge scored at 30-27 for her against Godinez. So if you got some assets, you might be able to sway the judges. But I do think Andrea Lee's going to just do a bit more damage on the feet. Montana De La Rosa lost to JJ Aldrich. JJ Aldrich is fucking awful. Let's move on, though, to another fight. Charles Radtke, the based one himself, versus Carlos Prates. I'm going to go with Prates. He's got the reach advantage here. He's a better striker. And even though Charles Radtke did get a nice KO in the first round against Gilbert Urbina his last time out, I don't rate Gilbert Urbina. I don't rate fighters coming down from middleweight to welterweight. Normally, it's you go up from welterweight to middleweight and you become a top 5 fighter and almost beat Israel Adesanya, like Kelvin Gastelum, or Sean Strickland, who beat Israel Adesanya, or Robert Whittaker, who was losing at welterweight and then became literally the second best middleweight in the world. But no, I don't like fighters from middleweight going down. You're not good. You're not talented. So yeah, Gilbert Urbina is shit. I don't rate Radtke's win over him that highly. He looked solid, but Urbina just looked like, what the fuck was he doing in there? And also, I'm not going to forget the fight before that. Although he had a wonderful post-fight interview, nothing will erase the fact from my mind that you went to a decision and made Blood Diamond look half decent. So yeah, I am going to be going with Prates. He got a nice KO against Trevin Giles. He was losing that fight a little bit beforehand, but I do think he's got that one-shot power at any point to just catch Radtke. And Radtke, bro, look at that post-fight interview from him against Blood Diamond. His eye was swollen up. He wasn't looking great. It was not an impressive performance at all. So yeah, I am going to go with Carlos Prates to win. Next fight, Bruno Ferreira versus Dustin Stoltzfus. Now, Bruno Ferreira KO'd Gregory Rodriguez, and Dustin Stoltzfus got KO'd by Abus Magomedov. Now look, maybe Bruno Ferreira gasses out in round 2 and 3, because he does seem like the guy who would be like a real one-round fighter. He does give me those vibes. But I'm going to back him here to get the KO, because you got KO'd in 20 seconds by Abus Magomedov with a front kick. I reckon Bruno Ferreira can catch you with something and probably chin you. Dustin Stoltzfus is one of those guys that just looks hesitant on the feet. He doesn't look good when he strikes. He really doesn't have any impressive wins in the UFC either. Beat Puna Soriano. I'm about to talk about that man in just a moment. You can see him on screen. I ain't going to be picking him. You can also see that already. And I don't rate that win very highly at all. Dustin Stoltzfus, fair enough. He might be able to grapple, wear out Bruno Ferreira. But if it stays on the feet, Bruno Ferreira, I like his KO power. You KO in Robocop, I'm going to rate that win. The KO over Phil Hawes, we don't rate that highly because everyone does it. But yeah, I'm going to be picking Bruno Ferreira to deal a solid KO here in the first round. But if it does go out the first round, I wouldn't mind Stoltzfus to work his grappling, maybe find a submission late. But yeah, if Bruno Ferreira is fighting at his best and not gassed out, he should smoke Dustin Stoltzfus. Let's move on, though, to the next fight. The aforementioned Punahele Soriano is fighting Miguel Baeza, and I'm going to go with Baeza. Look, he's lost his last 3. He's got KO'd by Andre Fialho, or he lost to Andre Fialho, got KO'd, I think, by Chaos Williams, and he lost to Santiago Ponzinibbio. I think he got KO'd by Fialho, yeah. But that was when Fialho was, actually good, and we didn't realize he had no chin. So, yeah. I'm going to be picking Miguel Baeza, even though he's coming off that loss streak. On the comparison, on the flip side, Puna Soriano just looks awful. Even just look at his face. He looks annoying. He looks like someone you don't want to pick to win a fist fight. This guy looks like someone who would get bullied in high school. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, I'm going to be going with Miguel Baeza, maybe by TKO, maybe by just sloppy, shitty decision. I think this will probably look a lot like in like a very comparable fight to Nico Price versus Alex Morona that just took place last week, in the sense that you might be expecting some weird, crazy finish, but neither of these guys are just that good at all. Puna Soriano lost to Kopylov, got smoked. That's not too bad, but yeah, the Stoltzfus loss is not it at all. And Miguel Baeza does have some wins. He beat Matt Brown, he beat Takashi Sato. Again, not crazy competition, but it's like, am I going to prefer bum welterweights or bum middleweights? I'm going to prefer bum welterweights, because typically bum welterweights can go up and be like 20 to 30 ranked middleweights. So yeah, that's who I'm going to go with, Miguel Baeza by, I'll say TKO probably. Let's move on though to the next fight. We got Zachary Reese versus Julian Marquez. Now, if you don't know who Zachary Reese is, he got KO'd by Cody Brundage with a slam. And if you watched my fight companion to that card, it was very enjoyable. Because it was the very fight after Selecki versus, what's his name? Drakkar Klose. And it was back-to-back slams, and I was like, what the fuck? And obviously everyone picked Reese going into that fight. Again, I don't think anyone fucking did research on the man. We all just saw, you're fighting Cody Brundage, you should win this fight. They saw the undefeated record, they're like, oh, he's probably half decent. Fights Cody Brundage, gets KO'd with a slam. Now, look, it's not like he got exposed in the striking or, he got submitted or anything like that. It was a little bit fluky, but I'm getting the vibe that this man is a bit of an armbar merchant, he's a guard merchant, and I don't like people that need to rely on submissions from their guard. Now, he's got TKO wins, of course, but his fight before the UFC against some Israeli dude, I posted about on my community page. The guy's fighter nickname is literally the Israeli Tank, and I made a joke which people got very offended at. I said, book this man against Bilal Muhammad, and they said, this is not a joking matter, and I said, my friend, I'm not joking. But that's a little side story there. But that's his last opponent, who is 6-1, so you might be like, oh, good opponent, but he's Jewish. Is he really going to be good at fighting? I've seen Ariel Helwani hit the pads. I'm just inclined to believe that their people are probably not built for combat, more built for the banking segments and stuff like that. But I'm lucky I'm not monetized. But, yeah, I don't think Julian Marquez is that good, but I also watched his fight against the Israeli Tank. I'm talking about Zach Reese here, where he did get a first-round submission, but that's because his opponent was quite literally retarded and didn't know how to defend an armbar, because he kind of wobbled him a bit on the feet, and he was cracking Zach Reese on the feet. Zach Reese went to ground. This guy landed a big ground and pound punch, kept trying to throw ground and pound, got himself stuck in an armbar, was almost out of the armbar. If he'd kept pulling his arm upwards, his elbow was literally cleared of the hip. And then he decided to not do that. He decided to stack back into the guard and just give Zach Reese an armbar. But Cody Brundage said, you know what, fuck your little guard, fuck your armbars, I'm going to slam you on your head and knock you out. And even Cody Brundage, if you watched that fight, it wasn't immediately like, takedown, guard, Cody takes him down, immediately gets a triangle, gets slammed. Like, there was a little bit of striking on the feet, and he was getting cracked by Cody Brundage. Now, Julian Marquez has some power. You can kind of look at that by seeing him. And also, he's not a complete spud in the grappling. He's got submission wins. Again, not against good opposition, but he has submissions. So I'm inclined to believe that his submission defense is solid-ish. And most of his losses are by TKO/KO. His last two, lost to Robocop, lost to Barry Alt. But Barry Alt, he was kind of putting it on him in the first, kind of gassed out. Robocop's a fucking good fighter, man. So yeah, I don't mind those losses for Marquez. Now look, do I think he might be at the best point in his career? No. But also, I think the thing with Zach Reese is, I assume, because he fought in Austin, Texas, I assume he's a Texas guy. Not guaranteed, I'm just guessing. And what I think the deal was is, he did fight on the Contender Series and win, but I feel like he's one of those guys that is not quite at the level to be fighting in the UFC yet. He's inexperienced. He doesn't have a really long combat sports background. But they've got a card. They're having him fight in Texas, and oh cool, we'll put this guy on the Texas card. They gave him literally the worst possible opponent, and he lost. Now look, there is a part of me when I was kind of thinking about this fight, I was thinking about my predictions. I was like, oh, maybe I pick him, even though he didn't look very good at all. Maybe I'm like, okay, who cares about logic? He'll win his next fight. Normally these guys coming off the Contender Series, Normally, these undefeated guys take their first loss. They don't normally go 2 losses in a row. So I was considering a Zach Reese underdog pick. He is actually the underdog, which is surprising because most people I've heard, Lucas, MMA Guru, MMA experts, a lot of these YouTube channels that I've watched, their predictions, they are picking Zach Reese, and I get it because he's got some grappling, but he's the opponent, apart from the Jewish dude that he fought, like he's fought a 4-12 opponent, he fought like a 12-15 opponent. He's fighting journeymen and bums, and Marquez might be a journeyman, but I'm gonna back him. He's the more fun fighter. I think he's got a bit more power. I think he's less likely to get submitted and stuff too. And yeah, I think Zach Reese looks really shit when he throws punches and he leaves his hands down and he does get cracked. So I'm going to pick Marquez by TKO. Let's move on though to the more important fights. Now the first fight I want to properly talk about, even though yes, it is on the prelims, but I put this over like as an important fight to talk about over Miguel Baeza versus Soriano and Reese versus Marquez. Even though I spent a lot of time talking about Reese versus Marquez, I am going to be picking Daniel Marcos against John Castenada. He's a very slight favourite, and I think he's got the better boxing and the better striking, and I like the pace that he pushes as well. Now, John Castenada, what was his last fight? He fought Muin Gafarov. No, that wasn't his last fight, though. He fought Kyung Ho Kang on UFC 295. He won a decision. Kyung Ho Kang, not the best fighter, I'm going to say. Never been a guy that's looked like anything special in the UFC. And then before that, Muin Gafarov took him to a decision too. Now, he does have some finishes, but I don't think he's got like the stopping power to really like keep Marcos at bay and prevent him from gaining momentum. Because Marcos, his last fight against Ao Chilang ended in a no contest. He was piecing up Ao Chilang. He was beating him up. Chilang had pretty much no moments in that fight. Ended in a nut shot, no contest. But I count that pretty much as a win for him. Before that, he did kind of rob Davy Grant, arguably. And the worry that I have here is in that fight, his pace was shit. And he didn't throw much, and Davy Grant just threw more and landed more, and as a result, should have won the fight, but didn't. Before that, against Simon Oliveira, came in as an underdog in that fight, got the TKO, has good body shots, pushed a good pace, and took over that fight in the second round, I believe it was, and then got the finish there. But Castenada, he's had fights, and the reason why I think Marcos is going to push a pace later on and take over and maybe get a late TKO, or at least win a decision with like a dominant round 3, is because against Daniel Santos in that fight, Daniel Santos versus John Castenada. Castenada was putting it on him, and he was dropping Santos. Santos being a little bit of a chinny guy, but then Santos came back, just kept walking forward, very Elvis Brenner, Guram Kutataladze-esque, in the sense that he was getting beaten up, he got dropped, he looked wobbled, he looked rocked in many moments of that fight, but just kept pushing forward and then kind of gassed Castenada out, cracked him with some big shots, and the finish was not like a crazy KO or knockdown, it was like he hurt him on the feet, and then and he just kept walking towards him, and Castenada's like, what the fuck, this guy's not stopping. It's the shoot box style, it happens a lot. So I do think Marcos can do a similar thing here because he picks up a lot of output. When he gets the combinations going, he's a really good striker to watch. He is undefeated. Am I saying Marcos is going to be a top 5 guy? No. Top 10? Probably not. Ranked? I do think so. At some point, I do think he can be ranked. Davy Grant is a very solid fighter, and even if that fight was a robbery, I still rate a close fight with Davy Grant in your second UFC fight. Doesn't matter that his record shows, oh, this guy looks more experienced, he's 14, 15-0. Doesn't matter. It was his second UFC fight, and I like the fact that you made it close with Davy Grant. And then against Ao Chilang, he looked way better. He put the output on him, and I think he can do a similar thing here. Now, Castenada, the movement, he's probably not as stationary as Ao Chilang. He does have a little bit of a reach advantage, not like significant enough to take into consideration, though. I do think Marcos is a better striker. I think he's got more weapons. Castenada maybe has the better, like, pure boxing, but Marcos mixes in kicks. He has good low kicks, body shots too. Castenada's pretty susceptible to the body from what I've seen in his fights. And yeah, Muin Gafarov's not that good, took him to a decision. Kyung Ho Kang, not that good, took him to a decision. I think Marcos are going to win, keep the train going, keep the undefeated record intact. Let's move on, though, to the next fight. Next up, we got Ludovic Klein versus Thiago Moises. Now, this fight is also on the prelims. I don't know why. In my opinion, this is like the second best fight on the card outside of the main event. And I am going to be picking Ludovic Klein as a slight favourite again. Now, you guys might comment me in the comments and tell me I'm only picking favourites. Yeah, sure. But also, a lot of these are fucking pick 'em fights, like minus 120s, minus 110, minus 115, all this shit. And also, the person I'm picking in the main event, spoiler, I'm picking Imavov. I'll talk about that in a bit. But he's the favorite on the odds, but fucking every person under the sun is picking Cannonier. So I don't think this is really like I'm picking favorites. The odds are not always indicative of like who's everyone's actually picking. So yeah, I am going with Klein. He's a very slight favourite, and I do think this is a competitive fight, but I think the style of fight that Klein brings, which is that short, kind of stocky, real explosive power puncher with pretty solid fucking grappling. He's got good takedown defense, doesn't really lose on the ground that much. And the fight that he drew recently-ish with Jai Herbert back at, I think it was UFC 286, from memory, I thought Klein won that fight. I thought the draw was a bit questionable, but I forget what happened exactly in that fight. Maybe the draw was reasonable. I don't know. But Jai Herbert is a way longer, rangier striker. And that's the guys that are probably going to give Klein a little bit more trouble. Because I think against grapplers, am I saying Klein is as good as Bernard St. Denis? No. But I think he can implement a similar sort of style and show off a similar sort of like approach to how BSD did against Thiago Moises. And that is be better at striking, be more powerful, be more aggressive, just push forward. Moises has been finished a lot. Klein has losses in his career, not saying he doesn't, not saying he hasn't had performances where like, fuck, is this guy any good? But I'm looking at who looks like they've made the more like rapid jump or the more improvement or the bigger improvement, I should say, in their recent performances. Now, both of these guys' last fights, I should say, both against Cans. Ludovic Klein fought AJ Cunningham, beat him up, KO'd him in the first round. Thiago Moises fought Mitch Ramirez, beat him up, TKO'd him, I believe, in the second or third round. I think it was the third round. Chopped up his legs a lot. But I don't think Moises is going to just cleanly outstrike Klein. And even though you hear Moises and you think, oh, elite grappler, which he's a good grappler, he's going to sub Klein or he's going to dominate him on the ground. Moises in his fights doesn't really dominate heaps of people on the ground. He's been striking a lot more recently. And even BSD took him down and beat him up there and kind of neutralized him on the ground. Now, people, they see that Moises has fought the better competition. He's fought the Makhachevs of the world. But again, lost. Just because you went 4 rounds with Islam doesn't necessarily mean you are elite. That was before Islam really started getting good and just smoking everyone. So yeah, I do think Moises' style is not going to match up too well with Klein. If this does stay on the feet, I think Klein is going to absolutely smoke him. Or not smoke him, but I think he's just watch these two strike. Klein throws better combinations. Klein is more powerful. Klein's got the crisper, cleaner striking, and I think he's got better defense too, and he's less likely out of the two of them to get chinned. That's my opinion. Also got a bit of a reach advantage, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, I just like his style. I like him to be more aggressive in this fight, and he's going to look better on the scorecards. And that matters in these fights. If you think a fight's going to go decision, which I do think this probably will, because I do respect Moises' ability to stay in a fight for a lot of the time, and I don't think Klein's going to kind of beat him up like BSD did. I do think he'll win still. But yeah, you got to look. If you think a fight's going to go to a decision, who's the more powerful guy? Who's going to be throwing shots that look better? This is more indicative of if it's on the feet, of course. If it's on the ground, you got to take other things into consideration. But if it's going to be on the feet, who's going to be throwing more shots? Who's going to be looking more aggressive? Who's going to be on the front foot? I think the answer to all of those questions is Klein. So I'm going to take him to win by decision. Maybe gets a TKO. If he really shows up well here, gets a TKO, wouldn't shock me, but I respect Moises' toughness. So yeah, I'll pick Klein by decision, maybe 30-27, 29-28. I think he'll stuff any takedowns from Thiago and beat him up on the feet a little bit. But let's move on to the next fight. Raul Rosas Jr., a.k.a. Meep versus Ricky Turcios. Rosas is a favourite for good reason. I'm picking him to win by decision, maybe TKO on the ground or submission. Turcios, I don't think that is that good. I might trip in, or is this the dude that starts stomping and screaming and stuff in the cage and looking retarded? Fights like a little autistic child, little Tourette's fucking kid. Am I wrong, or is this the guy? Because he looks retarded in fights, and I don't think he's that good anywhere. I'm not even going to talk about his record, about his fight. What's the point of breaking this down? Rosas, he's being fed a can, or not a can, but he's being fed pretty much a layup. The level, below, the level above Terrence Mitchell, who's Rosas' last win, but below Christian Rodriguez, who's the guy he lost to. I think he should get the win pretty comfortably. beat him up on the ground probably. Yeah, Turcios just ain't that good. He fought Zahabi, looked kind of mid. Who's he beat that's like impressive? I don't know. Yeah, I'm picking Reyes pretty comfortably. Decision probably, because I don't think his finishing potential is like crazy against like decent fighters. But if he gets a finish again, it wouldn't surprise me. Let's move on though to another fight. Dominick No Chin Reyes versus Dustin Jacoby. Jacoby's a favourite, minus 225 for pretty good reason. Reyes, you just can't trust him. You can't trust him against anyone with any sort of power or any danger on the feet. Because, yeah, if you're getting KO'd from jabs by Ryan Spann, I ain't going to pick you to beat. Not saying Jacoby is crazy good, but we see this dude is pretty solid at KOing guys with no chin. Like, he KO'd Nzechukwu in the first. I think he can do a pretty similar thing to Reyes. Nzechukwu, another guy with a pretty shit chin. And again, I'm not saying I rate that win, but I also don't rate Dominick Reyes at all. And it's crazy to say that the guy who beat John Jones 3 years ago or 4 years ago is now a plus 200 underdog against an unranked light heavyweight. Crazy how time flies. Yeah, but that's the game. He got robbed against Jones, and then since then, I guess either lost his motivation or lost his chin in a fight where he didn't actually take that much damage. So yeah, the KO to Blachowicz was bad. The KO against Yuri was brutal. And the KO against Spann was just like, just indicative of like, yeah, this dude's chin is completely gone. Like, you get KO'd by Blachowicz, fair enough. You get fucking beat up by Yuri. Took a lot of damage in that fight before the KO. That's why I did, like, that's not indicative of like, oh my god, Reyes has just the worst chin imaginable. Because, you know, he took damage from Yuri before that and then got KO'd with a fucking spinning elbow. Anyone under the sun's getting KO'd with a spinning elbow from Yuri Prohaska. But then the next fight, Ryan Spann KO'd you with a jab. I can't be trusting you against anyone. Yeah, Dustin Jacoby, he fought Menefield for 3 rounds, kind of got rocked a little bit. I don't rate Reyes' power either, though. I don't think he's got much finishing potential at this stage in his career. So yeah, it's pretty comfortable. I think most people are going to be picking Jacoby. And I know people are going to be like saying, oh, I hope Reyes wins. I don't. I personally think it's very amusing to see Dominick Reyes get KO'd. Because honestly, like, you might ask why. I don't think Reyes, I've heard a lot of stories. Reyes is a bit of a cunt, is what I've heard from a lot of people. Not the best guy, not a nice dude from what I've heard, kind of a scumbag. I'm not going to elaborate on this because I'm not the one that's personally experienced it, but I've just heard stories. So again, I'm not saying for sure, but I don't know. I've heard Reyes, not the best guy. So yeah, I'll be very indifferent about the result of this fight. Let's move on though to the main event. And we got Jared Cannonier versus Nassourdine Imavov. Now, Imavov coming in as a very slight favourite, but it's crazy because every single fucking person that I've seen is picking Jared Cannonier. The UFC put up a poll of who do you think's going to win. It's like 80% Jared Cannonier. So those are not indicative of Imavov as a minus 120 favourite. Now, I don't mind Imavov as a favourite. Like, I would probably still be comfortable betting on him. Because I'm not like 100% confident. Like, I'm not like, he's a lock. I'm not locking Imavov here. But I do think he's going to get the win. And I do think maybe I'm just seeing something that other people aren't. Maybe I'm being delusional and retarded. But I think I'm seeing something here that a lot of people aren't, and I think I'm approaching this prediction in a way that many people aren't, because people are too quick to resume check and to be like, Cannonier has beat these guys and fought all these top guys, and the only good person that Imavov's fought, he lost to, and that was Sean Strickland. And people do this, and I used to do this all the time. I would resume cope, I would overly rely on resumes to make picks in fights, and it always cost me. And then I would always be like, well, how was I meant to know he was going to win? He only beat this guy and this guy, and this guy hasn't beat anyone good, but he beat him. How does that make sense? I did that a lot. And then I learned to stop doing that as much because it doesn't work. And what I'm going with here, I'm picking Imavov by decision is my official prediction. But yeah, we're about to see Jared Cannonier step in the cage after a year off at 40. And also during that time around December, he injured and tore his MCL, and that's an injury. I've torn my MCL before. That's an injury that takes a lot of time to recover, and even once it is recovered, that's months of not training at all, otherwise you're just going to cook it again. So that's months of not training, and on top of that, that's the months of not training, plus it's still not at 100% for at least a couple months afterwards. It's still not fully good. Like, when I tore my MCL, it would I would have like weights, like a dumbbell on my floor in my room, and I would try and move it with my foot. It would be in my way. I'd just kick it out of the way with my foot, and I literally wouldn't have the strength in my fucking knee joint, in my leg, to move a weight. Like, it would hurt my leg to do that. That was 2 months after I tore my MCL. And that wasn't even a full tear. That was a partial tear and a strain. With his Cannonier, I'm pretty sure fully tore his MCL. And at 40 years old, you don't recover as well from injuries. I'm 17. I assume most of you guys know this. I'm 17. You recover from fucking injuries a lot better as a teenager than you do as an adult who's 40. Now, obviously, Cannonier is an elite athlete. He's got more medical help at his disposal, but I still don't like that for him. And also, against the guy in Imavov who kicks a lot, throws a lot of those chamber, oblique kicks and stuff, those side kicks to the knee, I think he can mess up Cannonier's knees with that. Now, I don't know which leg it is. I probably should have looked into that. But Cannonier, in the Vettori fight, he did switch stances. So if he puts that leg forward, Imavov's going to start stomping it, and he's going to start taking away the power and the strength in that knee to really plant on shots, move forward, even stuff takedowns, because I do think Nassourdine Imavov has some pretty good wrestling. He was the first guy to take down Chris Curtis in the UFC, I'm pretty sure. Chris Curtis had a 100% takedown defense going into that fight. Obviously, since then, Brendan Allen has taken him down. Because when Brendan Allen fought Chris Curtis, I think he did take his back at one point, but there was no takedowns. But Imavov took him down multiple times, made him look silly. Now, look, I'm not comparing Chris Curtis to Jared Cannonier, but what was I going to say? Imavov has got good takedowns, he's got good wrestling, and Cannonier is a guy that's been taken down before, and he can be grappled. Not saying he's just a bum on the ground, he's not no Caesar Almeida, but he can be grappled. Also, Vettori fight. People are looking at how good did Cannonier look from round 2 onwards. He beat the hell out of Vettori. Vettori is shit. I have no idea how that brick-headed fuck is a top 5 middleweight. It's just because he's got a good chin, and that is literally it. He's the middleweight version of Chito Vera. No skill, just chin, and he gets away with it. Because middleweight's awful. Cannonier beat up on him. Vettori's head is literally fucking sitting there on a platter. It does not move. I guarantee you, if you give a Marvin Vettori, he puts up the same numbers, but probably just doesn't look as impressive because he's got less power. But it's not hard to hit Marvin Vettori 240 times in the head. It's not that difficult. If you just throw output, you can do it. But in the first round, he got fucking rocked by Vettori. He started southpaw for whatever reason, and he got rocked by Vettori. Now, if Imavov, because he's got good leg kicks, if he can chew up if Cannonier comes out orthodox here and Imavov chews up that lead leg, which I think he can, because Cannonier not crazy good at checking leg kicks. Izzy was kind of able to kick him a whole bunch and implement the Adesanya Classic and get that 49-46 decision win. But Imavov, I think, can do pretty good with the leg kicks too. He's got good body kicks too. I like his... The one thing I want to say is, against Sean Strickland, I know he didn't look that good, and Cannonier looked better against Strickland than Imavov, but... Again, don't resume cope and resume check and be like, oh, this guy beat Strickland, but this guy lost to Strickland. It's about the style matchup, and I think the style that Cannonier brings to the cage is going to be really good for causing Sean Strickland problems. And that's a guy that throws big power and that isn't afraid to come forward. Because when you back up against Sean, we know he just wins 49-46 with a dodgy 4-1 scorecard split decision the other way. That's what happens. But against Cannonier, against fucking, why have I gone brain dead? Dricus and Cannonier both push forward, both big jacked dudes, no Jones, that throw big power. They're the ones that are able to cause Sean Strickland problems. And it's in the style matchup, because Imavov didn't look that good against Strickland. He looked solid at moments, and he actually won the 5th round, I'm pretty sure. But the style matchup for him, he matches up with Strickland a lot more similarly to how an Adesanya or a Hermansson does, in the sense decent, good precise striking, pretty quick, but Sean's weird little defense works way better for that when you kind of just stand at boxing range with him and throw straight punches. With his Cannonier, Dricus, they throw those looping shots, they get around the guard, they look better for the judges too. And it's a lot easier for Sean Strickland to block all those shots when you're throwing straight punches down the middle. I think Imavov is quicker than Cannonier. I think he's the cleaner striker. Cannonier obviously got more power. Cardio is probably better, but I do like Imavov fighting in another 5-rounder here. Second main event in a row. Obviously, Cannonier's fought a bunch of main events. But Imavov, as a guy who hasn't normally fought many, this is going to be 3 out of his last 4 fights as 5-rounders. I think he's going to be managing his pace better. He looked, against Strickland, he didn't really manage his pace too well. And also, he didn't watch the Buckley fight and then watch the Strickland fight. Obviously, Strickland's way better than Buckley, but just watch Imavov. Don't even watch Buckley or Strickland. Just watch Imavov. his movement was so, like, against Strickland in the Apex as well. I don't think the Apex favours him, and that's why I prefer that this is in a bigger cage, in an arena, because it gives him more space to move. And Cannonier, I think he looks better in the Apex, to be honest. Less space, it's easier for him to cut off his opponents, easier for him to back him up, easier for him to pressure him, compared to on the outside. Like, when's Cannonier fought in arenas? He fought against fucking Brunson and looked shit in the first. Then he fought Izzy. Easy win there for Izzy. And then since then he hasn't fought in an arena. So I think the bigger cage also favours Imavov. He's going to be the guy that's moving on the outside more, that's in and out. That's what I think he's going to be. Cannonier, if he comes out there, foot on the gas, just charging down Imavov straight away, then I do think he can have a lot of success. But if he tries to, especially because it's going to be a year out for him, he's going to be sitting, I think he's going to want to get a feel first. He's going to be sitting in there in round one. And I think it was the second round really onwards where he started putting the pace on Vettori. But that's because Vettori's way more hittable. Who else have we seen Cannonier look that good against, where he's just able to hit them whenever he wants and just put up fucking 250 shots to the head? Like, he doesn't normally do that because normally guys just don't let him hit them in the head. Like, if you're just going to be Marvin Vettori and put your fucking cranium in a stationary position and let him hit you, yeah, he's going to put up numbers. But against Izzy, he can't get those numbers off. Against Strickland, can't get those numbers off. Against Brunson even, looked kind of mid and shit in that fight. So yeah, I do think Imavov, Imavov's never been KO'd in his career, never really gets rocked either, to be honest. Strickland landed some good shots against him, but again, Strickland's a more precise striker than Cannonier. He's got better boxing. Cannonier, I think, just won that fight. I still think Strickland won, but Cannonier won that fight just based off looking good for the judges, because we know judges are retarded. But yeah, I do think Imavov's going to be better at range. He's going to have the cleaner striking. Cannonier, I do think, can win the 4th and 5th, unless Imavov just completely chews him up in round 1 and 2 and just has him completely out of it and just not able to implement his game plan. Also, again, I think I said Imavov, I like his ability to shoot takedowns, mix that in too. He's got the wider range of strikes too. He throws kicks, he throws knees, he throws elbows. He's good there too. I think in the clinch he can do some decent work. Cannonier is probably stronger than him, so he can probably muscle him around a little bit. But I don't like Cannonier coming off a year layoff. I like Imavov fighting back-to-back 5-rounders. Against Dolidze, he tuned him up in round 1, almost finished him, and then kind of just took the foot off the gas a little bit, and then just won easily the last 4 rounds. But I also wouldn't... Cannonier's a little bit chinny too. Cannonier got cracked by Brunson. Cannonier got rocked by Marvin Vettori a couple of times. If he comes out southpaw, I could see Imavov just cracking him and TKOing him. I do think it will go decision though. I do think Imavov will just manage energy better than he normally does and not allow Cannonier. Because if he fights flat-footed like he did against Strickland, flat-footed in boxing range and just try and fucking trade hands, he's going to lose. But if he mixes up the leg kicks, if he mixes up, like if he moves around, if he's like, you know what I mean, the Cannonier that's bouncing in and out, doing the typical French kickboxing style. Against Strickland, he tried to just box with Sean. I swear he did not throw leg kicks. He basically threw no kicks to the body, and he let Sean Strickland's fight, because that's what Strickland does to a lot of people. But against Cannonier, I think he's gonna use the kicks. They game plan very well for a lot of fights. Also, even though it was short notice against Strickland, they were preparing for Gastelum. I'm sure they had a very different game plan. Not saying that he would beat Sean Strickland if they fought now, but still, I don't think that helps. But yeah, they game plan well. Against Curtis, pretty much looked untouchable. Obviously, no contest with the headbutt. Against Dolidze, tuned him up the entire time. Dolidze's not that good, but I think Dolidze's very similar to Vettori. We saw them fight. They had a very competitive fight. Dolidze's another guy that just puts his head on a fucking silver platter and allows you to hit him. But I still think... Also, Imavov's win over Buckley aged pretty well. And yeah, I do think he's just a better technical striker. I'm not going to look at resumes and see who's beat who. I'm just going to watch them fight and say who I think is actually better at striking, because I do think this will be predominantly a striking match. I don't think Cannonier is going to look like he did against Vettori, coming back after a year layoff with an injury too. If he does, then fair enough. Yeah, holiday yapping I've been doing. I'm picking Imavov. I'm picking him by decision. An early TKO though wouldn't surprise me if Cannonier was just really slow on the feet early, and because Cannonier is hittable down the line. Yeah, as I said, Vettori caught him. Cannonier's going to be... I don't think he's going to be nearly as quick as Imavov too. So yeah, Imavov by decision. I'm like the only fucking person, I swear, that's picking Imavov. in the YouTube community. Maybe I'm tripping, but I know Luca's picking Cannonier. I know Guru's picking Cannonier. And Maxwell's picking him. I know a lot of people picking Jared Cannonier. And I get it. I'm not saying he can't win. He can definitely win this fight. But if Imavov fights the way that he fights best, which is range striking, bouncing in and out, using kicks, using knees, using elbows, using a wider variety of strikes, I think it can look good for the judges. I think it can look similar to the Adesanya fight, but just with more output coming from the side of Imavov than Izzy had against Jared. So yeah, Imavov by decision is the pick. He's a favourite, but no one really is picking him from what I'm seeing. But that is the card, guys. Yapped on for a lot, especially with this main event. I'm actually really looking forward to this main event. That's why I wanted to talk about it a lot. When there's fights that I really give a fuck about, then I will talk about it for a very long period of time. So yeah, whole lot of yapping. You get the point. Those are the full card predictions. You can see them on screen. Obviously, I gave my picks, but those are the exact picks. Again, subject to change. I might change them on. I'm gonna keep the fighter the same, but I might change the method of victories or some shit like that. But yeah, those are the picks. Hopefully, I do pretty well. I'm on a hot streak. Since UFC 300, so post that card for the Perez versus Nicolau card, 301, St. Louis, Barboza Murphy, 302. Those last 5 cards, I'm sitting at 80% prediction rate. So yeah, I'm doing pretty fucking good recently. Hopefully we can keep the ball rolling. And yeah, tune in for the Fight Companion too. I'm going to be live for this card, probably around the back end of the prelims. I want to go live for the Moises Klein fight. Maybe Castenada Marquez if that's not too early on the card, because I think it starts like 7 a.m. here in Australia, so I might sleep in, miss the WMMA. But yeah, that's done. Tune in for the Fight Companion. I'll put up I'll schedule the stream closer to the date so you guys know. But yeah, see you guys in the next one. Peace out.